Washington, Chair of the committee. This meeting is being held in person at our office at 425 South Financial Place. The Pension Laws and Administrative Rules Committee is a standing committee and includes 5 CTPF trustees. The committee meets as needed and a quorum is 3 trustees on site. The committee includes President Jeffrey Blackwell, Trustee Victor Ochoa, Vice President Jacqueline Price Ward, Trustee Tanya D. Woods, and myself. Please note the following. Access instructions for remote attendance and instructions for in-person attendance have been posted on the fund's website. All participants, please wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking, and please limit discussion from each trustee to 3 minutes. Please note that for our staff and trustees to focus on the business of the meeting, we will not be responding to messages from participants using the Zoom chat feature. Please forward questions to memberservices@ctpf.org. We will now move to public participation. Do we have any members of the public who wish to be heard? Please raise your hand or send a note in the chat, and please limit your statement to 3 minutes each. Okay, very well. It is now time for roll call.
Roll call of committee members. Trustee Washington.
Present.
Trustee Blackwell.
Present.
Trustee Ochoa.
Present.
Trustee Price Ward. Trustee Woods. No, non-committee members. Trustee Barajas. Trustee Beza.
Present.
Trustee Nelson. Trustee Riley.
Am I considered present or not?
Yeah, you can, I mean, you're the, sorry. Hey, Trustee Riley, for our purposes, you don't make up part of a quorum because you're not on this committee, so she's making the roll call because your standing policy has been that you allow you guys also to participate.
Right.
So she's just taking a roll call of those trustees who are non-committee members.
Okay, yes, present.
Thank you. Trustee Rodriguez.
Present.
Trustee Benson.
Present.
That concludes roll call.
So the Open Meeting Act allows
Excuse
for remote participation.
Trustee Price Ward is present. I'm sorry. Sorry, Quentin. Just want to let her know I'm present.
We're getting there.
Okay.
Okay. The Open Meetings Act allows for remote participation by a trustee if a quorum is physically present and a member cannot physically attend due to personal illness or disability, employment, public body business, family, and other emergencies or unexpected child care obligations. And do we have any committee members who wish to, we know that we have Trustee Price Ward who would like to participate remotely. Is that correct, Trustee Price Ward?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, and so.
And Trustee Price Ward, what is the reason that you're out? I think Trustee Washington just stated the reasons. Do you fall within the exceptions for participation remotely? And if so, can you just generally state which one it is?
Family issues.
A family emergency, thank you.
Yes.
All right, so I will now entertain a motion and a second from a trustee who is participating in person to allow our remote trustee to fully participate in the meeting.
So move. Second.
All right, can you call the roll, please?
Does the whole board vote on that or just committee members?
The committee.
Okay, I just want to double check because they changed the rules on something else.
I have Trustee Blackwell and Trustee Ochoa.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Washington.
Yes.
Trustee Blackwell.
Yes.
Trustee Ochoa.
Yes.
That's 3 ayes. Thank you.
All right, we will now move to approval of the minutes. I will now entertain a motion and a second to approve the October 30th, 2023 Pension Law and Rules Committee meeting minutes. Can I get a second?
Oh, I didn't hear. You made it? All right.
Mhm.
Second. Victor
I'm
made the
sorry,
motion, I
Made the
second.
motion, yes.
So you have to make,
and who made the second?
Trustee Blackwell.
Thank you. Trustee Washington,
Yes.
trustee Blackwell,
Yes.
trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Price Ward.
yes,
That's 4 ayes. Thank you.
All right. We will now move on to the business of our meeting. The presentations from our finalists for legislative liaison services. And I will turn the meeting over to Dan Hurtado, our Chief Legal Officer.
Actually, Lupe, our senior counsel, is going to actually introduce the presenters.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Let me just give them a chance to move up to the table. It is on. It's green, so I assume that means it's on. Very soft-spoken. Morrill and Feidler firm, I would like to introduce you to our trustees. We have trustee Vincent, starting from the left, trustee Washington, trustee Blackwell, trustee Ochoa, trustee Beza, and trustee Rodriguez. I'm going to allow you to introduce your team. We're going to allow about 15 minutes for your presentation. If you run over, the trustees can let you know if they will allow you additional time, and then we're going to allow questions and answers from the committee. You may proceed whenever you're ready. Will you put up their PowerPoint, please?
Question for the attorney. Mr. Miller. Attorney Miller. Questions. So questions can be asked by any trustees or just committee members?
You can all ask, but you guys have, in past, you've allowed all to ask questions.
Thank you.
Turn your mic on so they can hear you in the back. Yeah.
Thank you. Next slide, please.
Chewed up a couple of minutes. Thank you, members of the committee for giving us this opportunity. But before we open up to questions, we'd like to tell you a little bit about our team, how we service our clients, and share some initial thoughts on how we can be of service to your fund.
So collectively, our team comes out of all 4 of the state legislative caucuses and the executive branch of Illinois government. We have more than a century of combined experience in state government and lobbying. And there's 2 firms present, Morrill Fiedler and Coy Pugh & Associates. We have a long, successful history of collaborating together. With all of our experience, we have relationships with every stakeholder group, certainly of relevance to you, and that would obviously include organized labor, the CTU, IFT, IEA, City of Chicago, other pension funds. We also have a pretty deep understanding of pensions, having experience providing both legislative and legal services to 4 state funds, well, 4 funds. The Cook County Annuities, Cook County Employees Annuity and Benefit Fund, TRS, SERS, and IMRF. In terms of our personal introduction, so I am, next slide, please. I'm Steve Morrill. I am I'm an attorney, former parliamentarian and chief legal counsel for the Illinois Senate. I wrote the rules that the legislature still operates under today. I'm a former commissioner of the Illinois Human Rights Commission. I've experienced as a special assistant attorney general, special assistant state's attorney, special counsel of the Cook County Board, experience as outside counsel and state lobbyist to various pension funds. And I've been doing this work for 30 years. We age in dog years, so it's a long time doing this.
Corey Pugh, I'm a former Illinois state representative, former United Methodist pastor. I served in my tenure as state representative as the chairman of the House Revenue Committee for a period of time, and I serve currently as one of the co-founders for the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus Foundation. I'm involved in several humanitarian issues internationally in Zambia, Ghana, and Jamaica. And I have over 20 years of lobbying experience, successful lobbying experience.
Good afternoon. Today, my name is Kurt Fiedler. I've got 17 years of lobbying experience. Before lobbying, I spent 5.5 years on the House Republican Research and Policy staff, primarily staffing the Revenue Committee and State Appropriations, which included the state pension funds. So that gives me a total of about 24 years with the General Assembly, and I'm just very much happy to meet you today.
Next slide, please. My name is Hannah Browning. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. I am a former deputy clerk and deputy marshal from the Illinois Supreme Court. I started my career as a committee clerk in the House of Representatives, and I have 7 years state lobbying experience. I will also introduce Gary and Chuck, who can't be here today. Gary Hanig, former deputy majority leader in the House. He was appointed Secretary of the Department of Transportation, and he also served as the Director of Legislative Affairs under Governor Pat Quinn, where he oversaw 84 legislative liaisons for the agencies, and he has more than 10 years state lobbying experience. And then rounding out the team is Chuck Hartke. Chuck was also in the House. He's a former assistant majority leader. He was the director of the Illinois Department of Agriculture, and he has more than 15 years of experience. We're ready for the next slide, please. And the next slide. Thank you.
Our approach, we are in Springfield every session day. We're very well known for our comprehensive monitoring and our first-rate client communications, including both weekly and monthly reports. You'll come to find that we are very effective. Writing is another hallmark of what our work does, whether it's bills, amendments, fact sheets, or support letters for our issues. But as you'll come to find out, we're very concise and effective.
One thing I think sets us apart, born largely of our depth of experience, is that we are exceptional strategic thinkers. We see the full chessboard and think many moves ahead. In our world, advanced planning is rewarded. Last minute reaction to what's happening is usually an unsuccessful approach. We also have a very strong work ethic. Boy.
We tend to excel in our holistic approach to our clients' responsibilities. We take a bottom-up approach and a top-down approach and everything in between. We work with the various leadership in committees, rank and file, staff, governor's office, agencies, interest groups, and more importantly than anything, the client itself.
Next slide, thank you. So in thinking about your needs in Springfield, we have some initial thoughts, and they come in 3 sort of buckets. Number one, if you were to retain us, we think the first thing we would do together is develop both proactive and defensive goals, viable goals. I think this would start with a detailed briefing of us by you about the fund and its history, including the 2017 reforms, and how, frankly, and how this fund went from 100% funding in 2001 to 47% today. We're interested in knowing how you've made progress on your strategic plan goals, including, have you been funded pursuant to the statutory formula across the board? Have you improved relations with CPS and CTU as identified as goals? And what is the state of your education of the legislature about the fund? From there, we would seek input from key legislators involved in this issue area to help assess the viability of possible agenda items, and then from there, collectively together, finalize goals, again, in collaboration with your staff. And surely one of those goals would be to address the obvious inequitable treatment relative to TRS of both this fund and City of Chicago taxpayers. You can tell we rehearsed a bit.
We're known in Springfield as process experts. We are working with you to deal with your subject matter. We provide our process to your subject matter and it collaborate to get a reasonable, viable effort.
Next slide, please. So the second thing, once we've got goals established, is developing a real plan for achieving those goals. Not just showing up, but really planning it ahead. For us, typically, and if we're seeking proactive initiatives, that starts with developing legislative champions in each of the 4 legislative caucuses. For you, we want to make your funds priorities of Chicago legislators. That's a really important part. 2, enlisting allies before the session even starts around your goals. So CPS, CTU, IFT, City of Chicago, maybe the Civic Federation, and perhaps others early on. 3, as appropriate. We recognize your fiduciary obligations are somewhat different here, but as appropriate, mobilizing perhaps your members and annuitants around these goals. 4, as Kurt mentioned, developing effective writings, fact sheets, the one-pagers. If you can't put it on one page, it won't get read. And then finally, we want to sync up your goals with what's going on in Springfield anyway in this issue area. And we see 3 tremendous opportunities for you. One is the governor's reamortization of state pension funds, his plan. Happy in the questions to explain why that's an opportunity for youth. 2, the ongoing Tier 2 safe harbor conversations that are expected to generate legislation. And then 3, gaming expansion in Chicago, particularly the VGT. These are 3 things that provide tremendous opportunity for you.
Our work over the years has led us to understand that a plan means to proceed with intention and discipline. And you'll find that's our mantra, and that's what we hang our hats on. And that's what wins legislative efforts.
So next slide, please. Our third bucket, education and advocacy. We've got your goals identified. We have a plan in place. And now let's get about the business of advocacy. Just again, just from this vantage point early on, we recommend, or we believe it would make sense to leverage your coming 130th birthday as the oldest Illinois pension fund, established in 1895. What a storied thing. I didn't even know about it. Jane Addams as a board chair. Tell folks the story about how the state supports TRS at 98%. Or $4,000 per student, while this fund receives from the state about 32% or $1,000 per student. It may be appropriate at the outset of session to send a letter to every member of the General Assembly, telling them about your history and about your goals for the session. Very early in the session, we would want, before it gets busy with the bills, the substantive bills, have a subject matter hearing in both the House and Senate pension committees about this fund's history. I mean, you set the table for everything that followed, and also about your goals, and possibly also to have your executive director maybe speak before the City Club of Chicago, maybe having appropriate people write letters to the editor of Chicago media, maybe even solicit editorials from the Chicago media.
To us, effective advocacy is a matter of good work. And for the sake of being redundant, good work combined with intention and discipline is, again, what we are offering and what we're bringing to the table.
Our final slide.
And we'll welcome, at this point in time, any questions from the committee
In
members.
Springfield, I will tell you, you get rewarded by committees if you're quicker than they gave you.
I do have a question. I would like for you to explain a bit more about what you were referring to about the
The
governor's.
opportunity?
Yes, well, specifically, the governor's reamortization, I think. you
Yeah,
mentioned. So, yeah.
So as you may know, by law,
Mhm.
the state pension funds are required to be 90% funded. What year? 2045. The governor is proposing to extend that 3 years to 2048 at 100% funding. And where does he get the money to get to 100% funding? There are two big debt issuances of the state that will retire in 2030 and 2032. One is to pay down the old bills, and the other was the pension obligation bond during the Blagojevich era. When those two bonds are retired, billions of dollars of debt is off our books and we're not paying annually. That frees up general revenue fund money. And what the governor is proposing is to put extra contributions into the state funds long after he's governor. And when the legislature who's voting to make this a mandate is gone to achieve 100% funding. If you've got, I was a parliamentarian. It's 60 votes in the House and 30 votes in the Senate. That's the guidepost. If you got people who say, yeah, but what about Chicago? What about the Chicago Teachers Pension Fund? Yeah, we're supposed to be 90% funded in 2059. Well, why don't we accelerate that date? Or why don't we get to 100% and do the same incremental? If we're going to have this freed up pot of GRF money that is being used to help state funds, let's do right by Chicago taxpayers who are double paying anyway. So that would be that. Can I
Okay.
share the other two? Do you mind?
Sure, please.
So there's talk of gaming expansion.
Mhm.
One of the big issues is whether to allow VGTs, these video gaming terminals, in the city of Chicago. If you remember, the Chicago land-based casino, the revenues are to support city pension funds. If we do authorize, if the state of Illinois authorizes VGTs, why not do the same thing and dedicate this revenue to city pension funds? And again, this is an opportunity. Something's happening anyway, and it's math, 60 and 30. If you have a group of legislators who are, you don't need a majority, you just need a necessary number, you have an opportunity. But Kurt, what's the third?
Tier 2.
Oh, tier 2.
Yes.
Yeah, so I know that tier 2 is something that you are dealing with as well. Presently, the majority party in Springfield has not yet put forward a plan, but there is a plan that was put out by the House Republicans, which basically said, if the state funds are found to be inadequate and IRS safe harbor rules, that the state will make up the difference to get the tier 2 pension system compliant. Well, that's another one that you could jump on too. If your system, guided by Article 17 of the Pension Code, state law, is deemed to be insufficient, then why wouldn't the state pick up that difference? So I think for you, you have 3 opportunities that are to piggyback onto to find state funding. And as Coy says, and this idea of approaching something with intentionality and discipline and not just reacting to what's happening, that takes laying the groundwork. So when these things come up, you have people who are saying, yeah, fine, but what about taking care of the Chicago Teacher Pension Fund as well, as long as we're dealing with this subject? And that's how you get things done. And I don't mean to monopolize, but viable goals, there's no way we're going to come up in Springfield with $1 billion a year for you of new money. But look at how the state's done it with these ramps, where they put mandates in law that they don't have to live with necessarily. They're out in the future. But if you piggyback onto what they're doing in other contexts, you can make incremental progress for your fund along the way. And the math, again, is 60 votes in the House and 30 votes in the Senate. And I mean, it's just equity. It's a matter of equity. Chicago taxpayers are not being treated fairly by having to pay for state taxes for downstate systems and then again for property taxes for their own. Was that
Yes,
responsive? Thank you.
yes, very much so. Thank you. Victor, and followed by trustee Maria Rodriguez.
I don't know if this question is for you or Carlton. I remember we talked about that whether our lobbyists could fight for the funding and versus CTU and CPS. So I don't know, whoever wants to address, you want to talk?
Sure. So the issue becomes whether a public pension fund can lobby for benefit changes or enhancements. And that is where we rely on our stakeholders. But as it relates to funding, that is our number one priority, and we certainly can do that.
May I just give you two little slices of my own personal experience? So TRS back in the day paid out of the fund retiree health insurance. I got hired by TRS to offload that as a state responsibility. It was a TRS driven thing. Yes, IEA was very vocal behind us, but I was quarterbacking that and we passed the law and we did it. IMRF wanted to enact an early retirement program. And if you know anything about IMRF, they are the best funded system in the state, but there was such a negative mindset about it. But we did that, and it was, I think that's akin to a benefit enhancement, but we would be delighted to work with your council to figure out exactly the role. And sometimes this is very much a tag team, but I don't think you need to be sidelined fully.
So I'm getting at, we would need you to encourage, and we would do what we can. It's a group. So you shouldn't be alone in this effort. Whoever we hire as lobbyists, it should be CPS and CTU also on the bandwagon. So working together with them.
If I may, that's actually one of our strong suits, is the bringing together a coalition of allies so that we do a great job quarterbacking that effort. So sometimes we'll lay the groundwork, we'll have the information, and then we'll send the fullback and the running back of CPS and CTU and hand them the ball from time to time. But you're exactly right about that, and that's one of our strong suits as well.
Thank you. You keep on mentioning where you want everything equitable, and I get that. And I see where you have the experience, you have IMRF, you have TRS. And if you guys been around long enough, then you recall, at least in 2003, there was something that they called the PRO Plan, Pension Responsibility Opportunity, where the Board of Ed had presented something over at the Chicago Teachers Pension Fund. And I remember distinctly because I was present at that time. What they were talking on, we have to be real careful when we say we want parity. TRS gets more per capita, per student, et cetera, et cetera. But once you get that parity, what that PRO plan was moving forward to, and I'm sure you guys were around, was at that time they called it Pension Responsibility Opportunity because they were headed toward a merger. We're independent. As you said, we've been independent since 1895. So we have to be careful about that. You said also, you mentioned also about working with other allies in that. That's been said a lot, but everybody has their own lobbyists. You can sometimes work with some of the lobbyists, but then when we talk about I felt you kind of went outside of your role when you said, well, we can set up things for executive director. He can write editorials. He can talk to cranes. That's why we have a communications person sitting at the end, Michelle Holloman. She handles that. So I understand what you're saying, but then it's kind of crossing the lines. I want to know more specifically, how can you do it, but not putting us in harm's path to say that we're going to be merged? Because you have TRS, you've got MIRF, you've got these other funds, but we are unique because we're independent. Same thing goes with the health insurance. Yes, we pay out about, we have something, we get $65 million. But once you say, okay, we'll get it from the state, but we know politics changes. Politicians go in and out the door like a revolving door. That changes. We have a deal with them that can go out the door. Right now, at least we're safer. Yeah, we're putting money out there, but it's so important for us to be independent. Yes, we're part of Article 17, et cetera, but what I like to hear is more, and like you're saying some of these ideas, it would have been helpful if we would have had a job description of what was put out there, what we're looking for in a lobbyist. I don't know if you have that handy, and I can review it, and I may have another question later, and I'll stop for now.
The RFP itself, trustee, was published and it's available on the website, but I would be happy to get you a copy.
Perfect, thank you. Okay.
Is
So-
it all right if we give you?
Yeah,
So
please.
Coy and I both have, so one of the things that we do reflexively, we understand our role, but we do collaborate with the client so that its independent efforts can support the effort. I was not suggesting in any.
No, no, and
by any
I'm
means-
saying you are. I'm just saying we have to take caution.
No, I understand.
Thank you.
And, even under, there are, fiduciary limitations on how you communicate with your members and annuitants, I imagine as well. But, in terms of like a city club speech, that would be something that would have to be embraced by your communications team. But those are the kinds of things that the client can support. Coy?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the relationship that you're talking about, that you're speaking to building. When we talk about the various lobbyists with CTU, with IFT, we have relationships with those agencies and those lobbyists. Our goal as a lobbyist is to come to a compromise that fits the request of the client. And that's the relationship that the extent of the relationship that we'll have with those other lobbyists, with those other agencies. Your independence, our role is to be your advocate. Whatever, if we're advocating for independence, that's what we'll do. But we're going to be successful in whatever the program is. Because we have a history of success.
And just a little slice of our life. So our office in Springfield is a block and a half from the Capitol. And we very typically in any session have a number of issues where we are working with a team of interest groups in pursuit of a common objective. And our conference room becomes a gathering place. And for whatever reason, I think part of it is being older and having history. This is something we just naturally contribute is strategy. I happen to come deeply out of the Senate side. Coy and Kurt and Gary and Chuck are on the House side. We've now seen it all, even beyond the leaders that are there. The other thing that we really excel at, and we almost inevitably take the role of, is this monitoring and reporting thing. And I credit Kurt and Hannah for that. It's just something, when we first started this business, we had this conscious mindset that if we ever got a call from a client, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while, what's going on? That would be a failure on our part. We have to be proactive so that we would never get that kind of an inquiry. And so we've developed a protocol that I know because our peers view it as really first rate.
So
Here.
Thank you.
yes, and then
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I want him finish his thought first. Please go ahead and continue.
That as a former legislator, the issue comes before the caucuses and then there's an advocacy portion that's required. Most other lobbyists are gauging their position on how strong they're going to advocate for something based on their opposition, based on who's fighting them. When they understand that we're their opposition, they're going to be willing to compromise before they're willing to fight. And that's our strength.
Okay. Do I have any other trustees that would like to get a question or something in right quickly before I go back to Trustee Rodriguez? Okay, go ahead, Trustee Rodriguez.
thank you. What you're stating, and I'll be honest with you, I've been sitting on this board for 19 years now. 12 years active teacher, off 6 years, and came back as a retiree. So what you're telling me, you pretty much, you're close to Springfield. I've heard that before. That they're going to bring us all together, I've heard that before. We've had lobbyists that had a second home out in Springfield, so that's nothing different. As far as bringing everybody together, times have changed. We can see, pick up a newspaper, look at anything. Nobody can agree on anything. Whether it's a presidential election, the what have you, anything going on in Springfield. So I'll listen to what you say, but it's not something that really is unique or I haven't heard before. My concern again is, I'm going to read through this and then I have other comments. Thank you.
And
Yes, sir.
with all due respect, we're not going to tell you what we can do. We're going to show you what we are capable of doing based on what your needs are. So we're not here to say what we can do. We're here to see what it is you need done, and we're going to apply a disciplined and intentional approach to getting the job done.
Let me also suggest to you, you look at things like the state budget that was just enacted. And there are many, many things, and Kurt's our budget expert, we can point to that are in that budget, migrant funding, for example, because of a sub part of the majority caucus insisting it be so. When we know that there are things coming that we can add an important detail to, that is a big deal. We have a big history working together on energy related things. We didn't represent ComEd, we represented the other side of that equation, the big electric users, the competitive suppliers, the renewable energy developers. And we succeeded in getting our stuff added against all odds to their bill, which we also succeeded in skinnying down. They only got 1/3 of what they originally requested. But I appreciate your skepticism, and I can only imagine having
It's
sit on
my
this.
job. That's what I'm.
Well, I understand, and it's also your lived experience. What I think really is a hallmark of ours is that we really do this work on the front end and follow an intentional plan as opposed to just showing up and sort of reacting. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
I think we got a question.
No, go ahead, finish your statement and then.
He alluded to the work we had with NRG as an energy company, and we secured over $150 million in grants for them. Then he also alluded to the fight that we had with ComEd. We were on the right side of history on that one, and you can see that. And as a result of that, that was the only piece of legislation in my 20+ years as a lobbyist that I was not victorious.
Well, wait a minute, but he says that he's measuring that as total victory. I think we won terrific victories. It was just in the nature of getting, I don't even want to call it a half a loaf. It was more than a half a loaf.
It was a compromise.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for your presentation.
Thank you for having
us.
us.
This is very informative, and I love the bow ties. They're amazing.
I don't even own a bow tie.
I do like them, actually.
Regular ties anymore.
See, I rarely wear a bow tie. They're too much trouble to tie. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I know you're on
And don't
Thank you
forget,
all.
Wherever you go, always smile and greet people because you never know who's walking past you in the hallway.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does trustee Rodriguez have both RFPs?
I'm sorry.
Sponsor. Oh, just,
Oh, I'm sorry.
she's got both. Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Lupe.
The next presenter is here. One of the members of the team had to take his daughter to the doctor, and so he'll be here at 2:00. So I'm giving you that information to let me know if you would like to start now, and he can join us when he gets here, or if you want to take a short break and we can start at 2. I don't want to delay.
That's 12 minutes. I think it's like 12 minutes. Can you hear me? Thank you, Beck. You're always so smiley.
Wait, so can we weigh in? Yeah, I mean, I think that's not too long, 12 minutes. But I want to make sure I get the overall picture right. We have just the two, right? So there's no changing of order that would help us. It would be just wait 12 minutes or something. Yeah. I think we can afford wait 12 minutes.
Are we still on recording or not?
We're still meeting, yeah.
I'm okay, Jeffrey. Is that good? Okay. Well, let's take let's go have some human minutes.
You can't walk away though. No. And you won't come back in 3 minutes.
No, we're not. Now we are.
That's why you're there and I'm here. Thank you for your patience, trustees, and I would like to introduce you to the firm of Michael Best. I would like to introduce your team to the trustees. So from left to right, we have trustee Vincent, trustee Washington, trustee Blackwell, trustee Ochoa, trustee Beza, and trustee Rodriguez. And I will allow you then to introduce your team. We have the timer set, so it'll let you know when your time is up. And if you need more time or you have a question pending, the trustees will let you know if they're available to give you more time. Thank you.
Did it again. Did that the last time I was here. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, I'm sorry. First of all, I want to thank you all for extending the invitation for us to be here today and the Michael Best team to present for the second time. I am Gia Orr. Let me not forget that. I am Gia Orr. I am principal at Michael Best and a former actual principal and vice principal within Chicago Public Charter and Contract Schools. I am also just off of 10-year tenure with the state of Illinois, with Illinois Guardianship and Advocacy Commission, where I specialize particularly in putting together a team that handles special education needs throughout the state, as well as legislation that has been passed with relation to special education.
May I ask what school?
Chicago International Charter School Longwood Campus, Ellison Campus, and then I'm the associate director of Chicago High School for the Arts, the first fine and performing arts school here.
Thank you.
And I'm Rob Marchand. I'm the founder of Michael Best Strategies 10 years ago. Actually, prior to that was the deputy secretary at the Wisconsin Department of Employee Trust Funds, which is the administrator of the Wisconsin retirement system. I was saying to Gia as we walked into this room, I feel very familiar with this setup. We used to sit right over here. It's good to be with you today. Michael Best, I'm going to talk a bit about Michael Best so you have a sense of kind of where we come from. Michael Best and Friedrich, the law firm, has been around since 1848. We've been a very strong presence for almost 2 decades now within the state of Illinois and the Chicago business community. And Michael Best Strategies, as I said, is 10 years old. We were formed to be the public affairs and lobbying affiliate or arm of the law firm. In my time at ETF with the Wisconsin retirement system, I became very familiar with a lot of the issues that I think you all have to kind of deal with as it relates to administering and leading the pension. We take very seriously the fiduciary nature of the position of trustee, the duties of the staff to administer the pension according to the laws, and of course, ultimately, the interests of the retirees and the participants. And I lived that. And so I was thrilled when we had the opportunity to potentially serve in this capacity. I think with Michael Best, you're going to get a solid, trusted brand that should complement and I think really fit the brand of the oldest pension system in the state of Illinois. A bit more about Michael Best on the next slide. We are a full service law firm. Of course, we're here today talking about our government affairs and lobbying team here in Illinois. But just know that if other issues arise, or if there's a need for our lobbying team to plug in with expertise back at the law firm, we do that routinely. We have built a team structure within Michael Best that allows non-lawyers and lawyers to basically work together, which sounds like it could be a miracle, but it actually does happen. So that's a key differentiator of us. We do have a number of different professionals with different backgrounds in addition to attorneys. Next slide, please. I wanted to just spend a moment on the unified approach that we try to take. You'll find with our team here in Illinois, and as it relates back with our teams of lobbyists in other states and in Washington, D.C., and with the attorneys at the firm, we really are a collaborative bunch. So teamwork is one of our key values. And I think you'll see that in the way that our team interacts with you and with your staff if you actually do procure our services. We don't want any surprises for you or your members. And we want you to be ahead of the information curve. And then when we know what the objective is, we want to go and make it happen. Obviously can't guarantee results, but we are in the results business and we want to do our best to win on behalf of you and the members. So pleasure to be here. We would definitely view the pension fund as a marquee client in our national portfolio.
I would be remiss if I didn't speak on behalf of my boss, Aaron Harris. Prior to joining Michael Best, he was the legislative director for now Governor J.B. Pritzker and over the Office of Legislative Affairs, first Assistant Deputy Chief of Staff over Energy, Environment, Fracture, and Elections. Prior to joining the governor's office and how he and I actually met and started working in tandem, he was the Chief of Intergovernmental Affairs for the Illinois Department of Juvenile Justice, as well as the Legislative Liaison and Legal Counsel for ISP, Illinois State Police. So that's the lead of the team. And again, I would be remiss if I didn't put that out for those folks who hadn't had a chance to hear that spiel. CTPF, as we know, is the oldest pension fund in the state of Illinois. It's the second oldest pension fund in the United States of America. And as we understand it and read through your forward-thinking strategic plan that encompasses 2023 through 2026, based off of a 2023 SWOT review and the installation of your current leadership. The objectives that we pulled from the plan that dovetail with the services that Michael Best offers, ensuring the state of Illinois and employers continue to fund CTPF per the statutory formula. Hello, boss. And from my teacher years, I'd say this is math class, right? Statutory formula, ensuring everyone has that. The objective, the next objective, require legislative advocates to ensure the Illinois legislature is educated about CTPF, as well as ensure that fund counsel and advisors keep CTPF up to date on compliance with current laws. History class and scaffolding at its best. because you have students, legislators, who some are very aware of CTPF. You have freshman legislators. You have those who came in the previous rankings, but maybe sat on different committees. And so we would take a scaffolding approach in approaching them and making sure that they're very familiar with the fund and what you all are attempting to do in the General Assembly during sessions. The next objective, explore options for referrals to the Attorney General so that potential criminal overpayments due to fraud and deception can be addressed. The Dean's office, the Principal's office. However, we do enjoy a fiduciary relationship with current Attorney General and have that ability to get him and his staff on the line as needed. Identifying legislation or actions that ensure 100% funding of the plan, budget planning. Yes, that part of the education schematic, always very necessary, and also trying to ensure that you have 100% funding for the folks in your building who provide the services. Identifying legislative actions that will ensure CTPF continues to meet safe harbor requirements for your Tier 2 employees, classroom management, improve relationships with the Chicago Board of Education and Chicago Public Schools, SEL. Well, now that the boss is here, are you ready to hop in?
Everyone, Aaron Harris. So to this slide, we see CTPF's and Michael Best's legislative strategy as being essentially threefold. The first part is looking at essentially legislation that you guys already has been introduced that's already in the world of ether. The first bill that I'm looking at is Senate Bill 3346. It's a bill that Senator Martwick essentially is the Senate sponsor to, and it was in House committee. And so in doing my analysis and looking very closely at this bill, finding it very vital, specifically as it relates to the return to work and reemployment. And also essentially understanding as it relates to driver arrests at 7.5, anytime it goes over 900 hours is very essential. So in looking and going through the legislation, I think the first things first is just making sure, one, having additional conversations with Senator Martwick to figure out, what was your concerns? And maybe you guys are already aware of some of the concerns that he already had. Making sure that we talk to some of our leaders and our allies that are in leadership. And then of course, talking to many of our allies. I think the second bill that, of course, you guys had as an initiative was Senate Bill 3252, and that was Senator Halpin. And looking at that bill was in assignments as well. But in understanding that this bill was met with some opposition, specifically from ISB. And kind of through my analysis, I did reached out to a few folks. ISB and specifically the comptroller's office had some concerns. We have some contacts with ISB specifically that might be able to really help. I would say bring them to neutral, and then we could work as a team to, of course, have conversations with the comptroller's office. After looking at that first fold of what we already have in the world of ether that's already been introduced in the General Assembly, I think the second part of our legislative plan has to be essentially as well looking at Tier 2. That was another thing that when I was looking at, I don't know if you guys had the discussion regarding Tier 2, but I know it was a very big deal of the governor, either enlarging it, eliminating Tier 2, but just figuring out if we can team up with coalitions to address that as well. The second part to that is also just speaking to the governor's office. When I was in the governor's office, it was a big deal. We were able to move the pension consolidation bill as it relates to the firefighters and police officers. His biggest thing that he talked about when we were in the office is trying to make sure that the pension fund was 100% funded, right? And so as a result, it hasn't happened this legislative year because it was a very tight legislative year. And so the rumbles around the Capitol is that this is going to be taken up either during veto session, lame duck session, or next year. We definitely want to make sure that we have a seat at the table, and we are engaging those necessary folks in the governor's office, like Deputy Governor Menard, who has pensions over him. And then when I was in the governor's office, I had, when I was a legislative director, that was in my portfolio as well. And then the last part of our legislative strategy that I feel like would be a really good approach, and the team does as well, is just really building our allies, right? Basically focusing in on, one, let's look at some of the freshmen that are coming in as well. Let's look at some of our area legislators where many of our members are located so that we can talk to those Chicago area legislators to really get them on board and making sure that they're align with what we're trying to do within the General Assembly. So those are the folks that we can really lean on as it relates to our initiative and making sure that we're in those meetings this summer when they're having the constant conversations on how the pension bill is going to look. So.
Next up, next slide, please. What it looks like when we say team approach.
So what it looks like for team approach is MBS will work with CTPF to create a detailed plan to achieve our objectives this summer, veto session, and lame duck in the 104th. We will do a scheduled kickoff meeting with CTPF. We will team up and go over every aspect of the organization. Those team meetings are usually, and we can do it virtually. You guys are always welcome to come to our office. We have food, and it's just like a whiteboard session. And essentially that whiteboard session is for us to really just kind of work through many of our legislative issues, understanding the organization and our needs, talking about those very objectives that Gia highlighted, and just really, in a collaborative approach, really laying the foundation and our next steps together. After that, and it gets us up to speed as well. Strategies will identify during this session many of our key allies in the General Assembly. We'll also identify many of the members in the administration that's going to be key for our success, and then also many key agency stakeholders as well during this conversation and building relationships. Again, we will also be focused in on many of the city legislators that have an interest as it relates to CTPF, and then also making sure that we are able to get out in their district, make sure that we are making sure that we're having these conversations early before we get to General Assembly, because usually by the time we get there, it's a madhouse. So we want to make sure that we're doing all of our homework up front and very early on. During lame duck, during veto, and during legislative session, strategies will track all the relevant legislation. We have a tracking system for which everything that pertains to CTPF will be provided. We will also provide a weekly report as it relates to our updates. And also we hold regular scheduled calls so that we can discuss legislation, and then also what's happening around the rail, what's going on in Springfield, so that you guys are abreast as well and staying in the loop as well as to what's happening in Springfield. We also will attend all committee meetings and board meetings involving CTPF as needed. And we're also the residential experts on drafting. We're nothing to take away from anything from Dan, but the residential experts on drafting, testifying, and making roll calls so that we're making sure that we're ensuring our success of our legislation. I think the last thing for us is just making sure we will also defeat in any legislation that is adverse to CTPF. We're going to work to make sure that we defeat that, and then anything that's our initiative or we support, we're going to make sure that we work to make sure that that's passed as well. So.
Wow.
Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you.
Very briefly, guys. We're not new to pension work. I'll keep this very brief. These are some of the pieces of legislation. I think the next one.
One more up.
More up, yep.
Is it page 8?
Yep.
Thank you.
Right there. Thank you, guys. So we're not new to this pension work. So these are some of the pieces of legislation that we have worked on over the years. The first bill is Senate Bill 1300. This is Senator Castro and Representative Hoffman. As I spoke to, this was the governor initiative that consolidated, that we worked to essentially consolidate many of the two funds together. Also, we worked on Senate Bill 1519. This is an initiative of Senator Patty Belloc and then also Leader Barbara Flynn Curry. This piece of legislation essentially expanded the pool of applicants who were eligible for public safety alternative formula, the alternative formula annuity benefits, specifically within the Department of Corrections and also the Department of Juvenile Justice. And then also, as of current legislation, Senate Bill 3616. This is a bill that we worked on this legislative session with Senator Martwick and then also Representative Kifowit, or Chair Kifowit and Chair Martwick. This is the bill that with the client, Illinois State Police Command Officers Association, that allowed Illinois State police officers who have met their required years of service to be able to purchase their time back to essentially usurp and go around the GRF fund and having to pay additional fees.
Can you slow down a little bit because the acoustics are bad here? You're just kind of, over here you sound like you're racing it through.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
All right.
So as we kind of thought about the needs of the pension fund, one of the things that dawned on us was that it it really requires a diverse set of skills and expertise. I think that in addition to lobbying, to get the job done. And so we placed on this slide some examples of areas where we feel like we've got the skill, the experience, and also the attention to detail, if you will, to help support these other areas where, you know, we really strive to want to help and make sure that there are no chinks in the armor and that the pension fund looks and is rock solid across all of its, you know, different operations. So we can get into some detail on this. I think actually, Gia, you have a couple of ideas on it.
Well, and also we would track legislation in these areas. Of course, you are our board. So anything that comes through that has to do with that. Recent legislation, of course, that was spearheaded by Speaker of the House, Chris Welch, about board diversity, things like that. So ensuring that you all are up to date on that. I think we've all been through audits in some way, shape, or form, but I've also had to write administrative rule. I sit on Cook County Commission of Human Rights and Ethics Commission, so rulemaking and all of that is something we're doing down the street on Washington. Elections, the affect of candidates on hot button issues, you know, being sure that if folks are winning their elections and coming in, what that means for CTPF and what that means for how we lobby those specific personnel. Investment portfolios and investment law, again, has a great effect on what it is CTPF is doing. And of course, property taxes and the collection or changing of the formulas that is happening undercurrent with KAGI and whomever would come in thereafter if that should happen.
Can I ask a quick question? And full disclosure, I meant to say this earlier, but I want to kind of move into question and answer, if that works for you all. If you all want to give us if you have something else like that you would like to summarize before I go there, but I do have like a question in a moment, but yeah.
Good to go.
Okay, well, awesome. So I was looking at your post-session debrief. We talked about, can you talk a bit about that, like what that would look like in real time? Like I see like the 30, 60, 90-day goals. So can you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
So for off session and next session work, because we consider this a year-round thing, right? Just because session gavelled out, it feels like yesterday, but 2 weeks ago, we would immediately go into what does our next 30, 60, 90 look like? So it's about a 3-month time span in between spring session gaveling out, veto session coming in. I know in Illinois, veto session has become it's very shortened, but if we have unfinished business that we can potentially finish up, do some wraparound services for during that time, we want to use veto session in that way. Also, if we have if there's an opportunity for us to move a bill, but maybe get into an omnibus package or some other vehicle piece of legislation, and we can do that during veto, of course, after having numerous conversations with folks on both sides of the aisle and in both chambers, then we look at that as well. So the summertime, the quote unquote off time, and the time between the end of veto session, the beginning of what would now be a lame duck session, and the beginning of spring session are times that we're utilizing to still either visit legislators, find out what exactly may be some of the root causes of reasons for opposition, and then to shore up our proponents so that no one has gone and drawn them to the other side.
Okay. Are there any questions?
So I do have a question, but I'm not sure if it's a service that's provided or how that, because what I noticed, legislatively, there are always two sides to every story, but it seems like the side that wins is the side that's better financed. And they could run ads and, do whatever. How do you, what's the strategy? Because if you're not, out there in the world with all this, almost fake news, how do you what's your strategy for overcoming?
That's a great question. And I've gone up against that here. Folks who have been heavily funded, I think the way that we do it is you have boots on the ground. right? We have to do good old fashioned lobbying, which I think our team is well equipped for. We have the relationships, and so Gia's point, we're able to touch every side of the aisle, the administration. And so essentially, with us, we are the folks that you're going to see to be able to curtail the money and all the messaging that's going on. It is just us. We'll be the ones around the rail talking to the legislators, making sure that we're making our messages getting out, making sure that we're setting up the necessary meetings to follow up. And that's the way that you start to debunk many of the things and the myths that essentially occur, right? And so that's the first thing, that to be able to curtail all the money. It's just really just making sure that we are, essentially down in Springfield, talking to folks and making sure that we're singing from the same hymnal as it relates to CTPF.
I think what I would add to that too is that allows us to really double down on the mission. And we, despite what I think we all see in the media as far as politicians go, most of these people want to do the right thing and make good decisions. And when we can go in and with shoe leather actually deliver the truth about the program or the issue at hand, that goes a long way.
Adding to that as well, part of what you indicated about how it plays out in the news and the stories. We also have relationships with political bloggers, et cetera. So if something was to, roll out, then we're able to mitigate and come back with the actual side of the story.
Communications arm is rather strong, so.
Yes. Do you have any affiliations with any other pension funds or any of our stakeholders? Any of you?
Yeah, we have really good relationships with CTU. So have worked with CTU for years, great relationship with their in-house lobbyists. They are good friends. As far as, CPS, we have great relationships with them. Folks are our friends. As it relates to CPS, very near and dear to our hearts. We talk to them a lot. Who else? Yeah, anyone else?
Any other, how about funds? Any other pension funds you've done work for? Or?
As far as fund.
Pardon?
For me, no.
No, for you, no.
Yeah, I think.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, so as far as the funds, no. But as far as it relates to legislation for, let's just say, the police, fire, in that space, yes. So.
Are you familiar with any of our trustees?
As far as the research, yes.
Research, what part? Can you elaborate a little bit?
From the research that I've done on everyone, I'm rather familiar with backgrounds, folks who have been teachers, the place, the time that's been spent in CPS and the time that has been dedicated to the fund as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Our trustees online, do you all have any questions? Okay.
No, I just enjoyed the presentation, Trustee Price Award. I just enjoyed the presentation actually. And I'm hoping that we can be in a better position going forward in this session. That's it.
I don't have any questions either, but the presentations have both been very good.
Okay.
I will say that from my time in education, which seems like it was yesterday as well, of course, I had a relationship with CTPF through my pension as well. So if you care to look it up, there I am, Gia Gardner-Orr. So that is my relationship with this particular.
What years did you work approximately?
I became a substitute teacher in the fall of 1999. Right after graduating from undergraduate. And then 2000 on to 2014 was my time from being a teacher, coach, dean, assistant principal, and then interim principal.
Thank you.
All right. Any final thoughts that you all would like to share with us?
We'd love to work with you.
So I do have one more question. So as far as your interactions with us as a board, with us as a fund, like, what does that look like as far as your reporting to us and keeping us abreast of what's happening in real time, so that we're not like sitting up twiddling our thumbs and wondering what's going on down in Springfield?
No such thing.
I think to Gia's point, you guys will have our phone numbers. You guys will be able to reach out. We will be at the board meetings, so you will see our faces a lot. We're not averse to talking about it, and we'll have very honest conversations so that you guys are all abreast of what's happening in Springfield. I think the best mechanism is just making sure that we're honest and that we're providing you guys with all the knowledge to make well-informed decisions. And so as it relates to the communications, Gia, myself, Rob, we'll be right here to make sure that we are at these meetings, we're on the calls, and if we need to be present, we will be present as well.
You don't have to find us.
Find us.
I will say this, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Yeah, finish your thought, please.
I switched over.
I know that, thank
I know
you.
you do.
I know.
I switched over to advocacy with the state of Illinois after being recruited by a state agency director who really wanted to start a special education arm to the agency. And if anyone's familiar with Illinois Guardianship and Advocacy Commission, it services persons with disabilities over the age of 18. We even take rollover from DCFS, who are unable to care for themselves and don't have any family or friends who are willing or able to care for them. One of the areas of gaps that they recognized in their SWAT back in 2013 or so was that there was another avenue having to deal with students with special needs and their families first, who needed to be educated on just the processes in order to, go ahead and ask for, oh gosh, why can't I think of the word, but ask for services. And they don't know the laws that surround a school has 10 working days to respond, and et cetera, et cetera. I was known as the principal and the assistant principal that sat in all of the special education meetings, to some chagrin, and to others, they loved it because I'm asking questions. I'm an over communicator, if you ask most of my students and things. So the reason why I switched over was realizing there was a gap in communication, right? And so being known as a communicator and an over communicator, that has come into the lobbying world. Legislators and clients know that our team, not hard to find. If you are in Springfield as well, we're usually there before you are. We're at the room before you are. We're talking to legislators. We're doing introductions so that we can continue to have these fiduciary relationships and these bridges that are built, no matter what side, whether an opponent or proponent.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. One of you mentioned that you would attend our meetings if needed. So which is it, if needed or all meetings?
We have no problem with attending all meetings.
You don't know what you just said.
So no, I do. So the way that we approach you, and I'll be very honest, and being the governor's legislative director, I approach every client the way that I approach JB, to make sure that I'm there, I'm present, the team is present, and we're answering questions that are necessary. So as it relates to if Aaron's not here, Gia will be here, right? If Gia, so someone will be present to make sure, to be present, to make sure that we are informing you guys of what's happening and making sure that you guys are abreast of every detail as it relates to Springfield and how it's affecting you.
Now, when you say you're available to everybody, that means every trustee, or is there?
So let me interject, because when we're beyond time, and I think Trustee Price Ward has a question, and I want to hear from her, and let's hit a pause on that. Trustee Price Ward, please.
All right, thank you, Quentin, Trustee Washington, rather. But anyway, I am not concerned, but I know how boots on the ground and collaboration is very important. You did mention that you have a very good relationship with Chicago Teachers Union, which in turn has a lot of good community-based or organizational relationships. And if something is on the cusp, I mean, what is the reaction time that, that we can activate and not, just spend a lot of time, you know, talking about things. And because right now we have a lot on our legislative agenda, and this is legislation that really needs to pass. And because a lot of it is draconian and totally unfair, just plain old unfair. So I want to know, as you said, your strategy is, when it's time for boots on the ground. How do you activate your stakeholders, or in what real time can you activate stakeholders so that we all can be involved in pushing our agenda forward?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Jim, feel free to jump in. I think as it relates to activating our stakeholders, we have a team of 6 individuals who will be servicing you guys. So right now you see myself, you see Gia, you see Rob, but there's also other team members that are ready and waiting to, so you guys are getting a very large team essentially right now. So as it relates to activation, I think specifically what you're mentioning, if there is something that is immediate, that is of immediate need, we are going to make sure that we are communicating with you. Of course, we understand dynamics of making sure we have partnerships and allies, and there's a lot of different dynamics at play, but we will always make sure that we are keeping you guys afloat of what's happening. And if it's happening immediate, to be able to take actions, we want to make sure that we are communicating with you guys, and then making sure that we are providing the necessary detail to our partners as well. So hopefully that answers your questions. But as far as the activation is immediate from our concern. And then, of course, as it relates to the immediate necessity to get the legislation passed, we're moving as soon as, we go day one. So.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your comment, and we're ready and waiting, because we need to get some things on and popping. All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Can I address both questions?
Yes, ma'am. And then we're going to wrap after that.
Okay. So to your question, we are available to
Thank
all.
you.
However, we also want to be sure that everything is streamlined and everyone understands what communications are being had. So nothing's in a vacuum. I'm very available. I'm an empty nester. My child is in college, still trying to find ways to fill my time. She's about to graduate. But she took it all up. And so I'm still filling time. We answer phone calls, emails, et cetera. We do consider ourselves, not to put us out there in a bad way, but like a 24/7 team. We are a triage team. If it happens at night, we're dealing with it at night. It doesn't become a thing to deal with in the morning. We all have legislators almost on the speed dial. Really exists on cell phones, but you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
we have them almost on speed dial. So it's like, hey, we have an issue. We need to address this. Can we address it with you now? Can I address it with you in the morning, et cetera? So that I think speaks to both questions in the sense of Trustee Price Ward, how quickly we activate. We don't believe in leaving lots of lag time in between, nor do we believe in not communicating fully with the members who've entrusted us with your work.
So my question was.
Okay, hang on just a quick moment. Jackie.
Yeah.
I thought she had finished.
Yes, Trustee Washington.
Were you done?
I just really needed to hear that, and thank you so much for Gia for even adding that. That gives me a context in which to work from, because we are also organizers because as union members, and we understand that we have to go after what we want, and that's a collective effort, and that's the kind of representation that I envision us having in Springfield and wherever we need to have it. Thank you, though. I appreciate the elaboration.
You're welcome.
Thank you all. Trustee Rodriguez, we need to wrap this. I do want to thank you all
Can I
for
finish? Because you said you'd come back to me. Can I?
30 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So now you see how it functions here, how it's working. You get an idea. So when you said you have an open communication, does that mean with all trustees, or will there be some kind of roadblock?
I want to address this.
Thank
So I think there's some fun rules in regards to communication between trustees and council. I don't know if that applies to the lobbyists. What
That's
I'd like
I'm
to
trying
say
find out.
is before you answer that question, let us, and you guys don't know me, I'm Joe Miller, I'm outside fiduciary counsel for the board. Let us address that and then we'll get back to you if you're the one that's elected, for sure.
Thank you. And
Yeah,
that was
that's
going to
what I
be
need
my,
clarification on.
that was going to be my next suggestion, which is why I want to wrap this. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for your presentation. We hope that your daughter, all is well with your daughter. And glad that you all made it in. This has been very thought-provoking and we appreciate you so much.
Perfect. Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So do we do this and
Just a moment, please.
don't do that
No,
finger, please.
I'm
I'm
asking you
sorry.
just a
I'm
moment.
sorry. It's just, it looks disrespectful when you're on camera doing the finger thing, okay?
Just a moment, please.
Thank
I want to
you.
wait till, before we
But that's
have
what I
any
was trying to say,
conversations.
because I was gonna say, do we need to close the door? That's all.
That's why I hadn't spoken, because I was waiting for them to do what they're doing, and then I'm gonna move the agenda. Thank you. All right, so,
Well, so next on the agenda is for this committee to make a recommendation to the board, to vote to make a recommendation to the board regarding which vendor should be selected. So I think probably the thing to do is to see if there's a consensus and then have a motion in a second.
okay, where did Jeff?
May I
go?
ask a question before that?
Yes, in just a moment. Where did? Can you text Jeff?
You have a question? Yeah. Oh. We went to stretch.
Oh,
Or was he out there?
I'm not sure where he went. He's roaming around the floor.
Yeah.
I got lost.
I have the same thing where you don't.
What happened? Back to, I lost. What happened?
We lost a committee member and
Sorry?
we lost our quorum.
Oh, yeah. No, my,
I didn't realize he was still gone. Thank you for saying that.
No problem.
see, back here, it sounded like he just said he wanted a stretch.
He's right on here. Our trustees are, our team is still here.
Can they?
Yes, yeah, much. Actually, I'm probably pretty good. Yeah, I'm actually good. Anybody need to charge their phone?
Whoever from the staff, like, talk to them more beforehand, I'd be curious.
Are we on, still recording? Oh,
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd be curious if they have some words to say or something of value.
Staff impressions?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, well, we had, an evaluation committee that was made up of Carlton and myself and Becky and Michelle. And well, Lupe could talk about the process a little bit more because she ran the process, but we looked at the written proposals and the evaluation team scored them. And then we decided to bring back, I think, total of five for interviews. We spent a lot of time thoroughly interviewing each of them, including these two candidates. And after we did the interviews, we were very favorable to both of these firms and decided to bring them to the Pension Laws Committee, for the committee to make a selection. I think we advanced them both to the committee because we thought either one of them could do a very good job for us. I don't know that I don't know if we have a consensus on the evaluation committee as to the number one. I don't know if is it your perception, Carlton, that we did have a consensus as to which one we preferred?
I think it was Michael Best for our team internally was the consensus. But we felt, to Dan's point, that the Morrill and Fiedler firm could also represent us well in Springfield. I think the advantage to the Michael Best team, I think, as you saw during the interviews, is that it truly is a three-headed monster versus.
Can you speak a little louder? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem, Trustee Rodriguez, sure.
Yeah.
So essentially what I was saying is that with this last team that you heard from, it truly is a three-headed team, with all of them contributing in terms of moving our legislation, answering our question, monitoring the legislation, et cetera. With the prior team, we think it's a strong team, but we think that Steve Morrill will be doing a lot of the work. So that was the advantage to Michael Best, is getting really all three team members moving the process forward.
Trustee Washington, I just wanted to add that this really was a robust search for lobbyists. The entire legal department searched probably over 1,000 registered lobbyists through every possible website. And we sent out multiple emails letting everybody know that we had this proposal out there. And the proposals that we received back were all of very high quality. So what is presented to you are really two great teams.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. I did see hers.
Next time I'll go like this.
Okay, go for it. And then,
I was just, what I didn't notice in either
Tammy.
was the price structure. How are lobbies, how are they paid? I mean, is there like a per legislation, how that, I mean, because I didn't see anything
Sure.
about
Do you want me
cost.
to answer, Carlton, or do you want to answer?
So I don't know the results of the BAFO, but they were both sent a BAFO, a best and final offer. Typically, they invoice us monthly, Trustee Vincent, and we pay them monthly. Yeah.
And it was, there was parity across all of the proposals. I mean, there might have been a difference of a few $100s, and it was even parity with what we've paid in the past.
Yeah, it's close to $9,000 a month, which is what we were paying the prior lobbyist. And frankly, I think we would be getting more for our money from these lobbyists.
Trustee Washington.
yes, go ahead.
In the past, we would receive those rubrics. I know when Adrian was still here, we would look at the rubrics, and the purpose of that is to see not so much the scoring, but their strengths and their weaknesses in different areas. So maybe that's a suggestion I'm going to make, or before the next meeting. Or the first question I wanted to ask Attorney Miller, does a decision have to be made today? Does a decision have to be made today, or you are dead set on this is it? We're not looking at a third? That's one. If a decision has to be made today, are we looking at anybody else? I always ask for three. I always ask for three when two come close. And the rubric, what the purpose of reading that rubric, to see their strengths and their weaknesses, and then we can balance that out, or, you know, as a full board member to vote, to say it's because they have more strengths in this area that we require. They have those skills more than maybe somebody else, even if somebody else scored higher. So I don't know how you feel about that rubric. I don't know why we stopped receiving them, but we did get them, so the full transparency to review them.
Yeah, I was just gonna, partially, I think I can respond to that. We did, Trustee Rodriguez, do a full scoring, both for written RFP responses as well as the oral presentations. As Dan mentioned, 5 of the 6 were actually called in for the interviews, and we've got that documented. And the plan is to share that as part of the packet for the board meeting, to your suggestion. So you see all of the information. In terms of today, the Pension Laws and Rules Committee that are here today, we would like to have a recommendation to the full board for one of the lobbyists to go forward for the full board to ratify that.
Thank you.
Just talk about impressions though, I'm glad the staff spoke well about the second group because the first group had a great presentation, I thought. But to hear that even if the presentation of the second group wasn't fantastic, that you guys had dug a little further and saw that they were really good too. So I feel good about having two good options.
Jackie.
Chair?
Agreed.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yes. I would like to make a motion if that's in order at this time.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I would like to move that we recommend or for after further legal contract negotiations, I would like to recommend the Michael Best strategies for our lives.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Can we call the question, please?
I did.
The President,
Trustee Washington,
yes.
trustee Blackwell,
Yes.
trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Price Ward, trustee Price Ward,
Made the motion and ran.
Well, you got three. You have, if you do not vote on this. You're not a member.
No.
Yeah, Jack.
Yes, she can vote. She's a member.
Trustee Price
Okay.
Ward, can you hear us?
This is a new rule, just so you know, I didn't know this guy.
Okay, so if
You do have
we have the three of the four, okay,
three affirmative votes. You got your three affirmative votes.
thank you. Okay, that brings us to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? None? Okay, new business? None? Okay, I'd like a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
Second.
That was President Blackwell and Trustee Ochoa, second.
Okay. I'm sorry, my computer went out. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
My vote is absolutely yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, for adjournment, I have trustee Blackwell made the motion, trustee Ochoa seconded,
Yes.
trustee Washington,
Yes.
trustee Blackwell,
Before we move on, was there something we need to do to add her vote or we're?
Yeah,
okay?
we got it.
Okay, I'll just ask. Yes.
We got it.
trustee,
And adjourn, so we're good.
trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Price Ward.
Yes. Can you hear me?
That's 4 ayes.
Yes, we got you.
That's 4 ayes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all. Everyone have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great
Trustee
meeting.
Price Ward.
Yes.
What time is it
Let me
there,
con-
trustee Price Ward?
It is the same time there, but AM. 3:59 AM.
Okay.
So she's like in the backwards episode of Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. I'm in that
Okay,
time zone.
we're still